As we approach round 5, we currently have an overall of 19 from 32. That means last week we had an absolute shocker. A few teams, not a couple, but a few teams rolling out the red carpet for us, that being the Roosters and the Sea Eagles, who I was pretty high on, thinking they turned a corner this season, but I've reverted back to their old ways. Unfortunate. The other team was the Raiders, who looked the goods for all of about 30 minutes. A couple of tough ones there. We did, however, have one perfect game with the Bunnies saluting with a 1-12 win and Jackie Whiten bagging a double. Also, with Parramatta, we did think that the stage was set for an Aiden Caesar takeover, and that it was. It was nice to see the vet absolutely put on a show for his new team and clutching up with that field goal. But yeah, with that out the way, let's get to this week's matches. And in the first game of the week, the Thursday night delivers another blockbuster. We have the Melbourne Storm hosting the Brisbane Broncos. Skimming through changes here, and we'll start with the home side. The Melbourne Storm coming off a bye. They welcome back 3 major players: Cam Munster, Jerome Hughes, and Christian Welsh. Welsh joins the bench along with Tyrone Wishart, who was in the halves last week. Jonah Pezzett and Chris Lewis drop out of the 17. And for the Broncos, only one change from the side that flogged the Cowboys last week, with Big Ben Takuro making his debut coming off the bench for Xavier Willison, who suffered a head knock at training. So yeah, a little unfortunate for Xavier. Keen to see how Big Ben does. I didn't think he'd be ready this season, you know. He's missing that physicality, that aggression, and that comes with time. I mean, look at Utuika Manu. He's coming off one of his more physically dominating games, and this is coming in like his 3rd year in the league. I am still keen to see him debut and hope he does do well. As for my pick in this match, last week I went against the Broncos at home against the Cowboys. I mean, I did not see a hiding coming. I believe the Cowboys were favourites in that one too, but we saw an absolute masterclass from Adam Reynolds, who played perfectly to the conditions. Will we see the same this week against the Melbourne Storm in Melbourne? It is a tough ask. I'm not too sure. I'm not too sure. I swear I've bet against the Broncos like twice this season already, maybe 3 times. And I can't lie, this week I'm slightly leaning towards the home side, the Melbourne Storm. Fresh off a bye, I can see them squeezing out a win in front of their home fans. So we're gonna go Storm 1-12, and we'll go with Eli Katoa to score that meat pie. Again, like we said last week, I do hope I'm wrong, but that's where I'm at. And in the first of 2 for Friday, we have the Bulldogs hosting the Roosters. This being played at a core stadium, pretty much a neutral ground. Looking through the changes, they've got 3 outs, the Bulldogs. The first being Josh Addo-Carr out with a concussion. That opens the door for Blake Wilson to jump back into the starting side. They will also be without Jacob Preston, who's out with a broken jaw. And his fill-in, they've gone with Josh Curran to play in the back row. And finally, the last out is Curtis Morin, who has been suspended, so that opens the door for, I believe it's another debutant in Kitione Kautonga, who has been named on the bench. For the Chooks, they've got massive moves in the engine room with the return of Lindsay Collins. So Terrell May drops back to the bench and Egan Butcher falls out of the 17. Also a little bit of a shuffle to the back row with Angus Crichton starting and Sitili Dubois-Nua coming off the bench. Not too much in this game. Although the Dogs have been pretty, what's the word I'm looking for here, hearty? I do think they're still severely lacking through the middle, and with the return of Lindsay Collins and a pretty much full strength pack for the Chooks, I see them giving the Bulldogs a little bit of a hard time. I do have the Roosters in this, and I have them by 13 plus, just off the back of their jacked engine room. Not to mention, they were a little disappointing last week, so they'll be looking for a little bit of a bounce back. But yeah, I've got Chooks 13 plus, and for the meat pie, we're going to play it safe here and go with new recruit Dom Young. Friday's headliner is an interesting one. We have the Newcastle Knights hosting the St. George Illawarra Dragons at the old McDonald Jones Stadium. Knights coming off a loss in Auckland, and the Dragons coming off a, would you say an upset? I guess so. Beating the Sea Eagles 20 points to 12 in what was one of the worst games of the season so far. In terms of changes, starting with the home side, they welcome back Jackson Hastings for Tyson Gamble, and also joining the fray, Dane Gagai and Leo Thompson. So some huge ins for the home side. For the Dragons, only the one change, they got the win last week. That is McMullo replacing Hamesele on the bench. As for my pick, look, I like the Knights in Newey, so that's where I'm going with this. They were a little underwhelming last week, but I do think the inclusions of Gagai and Thompson will be huge to help pick up the slack through the middle. Not to mention Hastings hopefully adds a little oil to their attack that's been looking pretty rusty in general. We're going to go Newcastle 1-12, and for our meat pie, we'll take Bradman Best. Kicking off Saturday's triple header, we have the South Sydney Rabbitohs hosting the New Zealand Warriors, this being played at once again Accor Stadium. So there is a little bit happening in this one, starting with the home side. They will be without their left wing staple. Alex Johnston has been sidelined with a hammy injury, so JD has chosen to go with Isaac Duitubol. It'll be his first match of 2024. They'll also be without Shaq Mitt, who was unavailable due to a Category 1 HIA last week. So they welcome back Kepi to the bench. For the Warriors, Chance Clockstay gets his first game of the year, with RTS shifting back to centre in what will be his 200th appearance in the league. So clap it up for Roger Tuivasa-Sheck. They've also made an interesting choice at 5'8", with Temaire Martin getting the nod ahead of Chanel Harris-Tavita, who falls out of the 17 altogether. Their final change is Marata Niukure getting the start for injured back rower Kurt Capewell, who was out, I think, with a concussion as well. There's plenty of that going around. So with Marata being promoted to the starting side, Tom Ale jumps onto the bench, as does Freddie Lussick for Chanel Harris-Tavita. My pick for this, I'm on the Warriors. Souths have been pretty disappointing this season, and I know the season's only 5 rounds deep, but in those 5 rounds, I'm not really seeing many or much improvement, if I'm being honest. Granted, they have been playing musical chairs in key positions, so that's definitely not helping and is actually adding to the, I guess, incoherent play. Maybe we'll see a shift this week after they finally got the monkey off their back last week, but yeah, I'm not convinced. So I'm on the Warriors 13+, and we're going to spin the block with Dallin. We'll take him ×2. Next up, we have Manly hosting Penrith at 4 Points Park. This could be interesting. In terms of changes, there are none for the home side, and for the Panthers, they welcome back James Fisher-Harris, who goes straight into the starting side. As for my pick, look, plain and simple, we'll be back in the machine this week. We did go against them to our peril. I mean, without Fisher-Harris, without Cleary, I thought they'd struggle, to be honest. There were some pretty controversial decisions in that match, but we won't go there. Bloody refs being refs, am I right? Just going straight textbook, no logic whatsoever. Stylistically, Penrith are a terrible matchup for any team, but Manly in particular. When they drag him into these wars, Manly always seem to fade in the back end. That's with or without Turbo. And yeah, not much else to take away from this matchup. I think plug and play Penrith, the most well-conditioned team in the league for the last 4 years. I think we'll be seeing a prototypical performance. And I'll cut Manly a little bit of slack. They were terrible last week. They'll be looking for a massive bounce back, so we'll go Penrith 1-12 points. As for our meat pie, we're going to go with Sunia Taruva. And to close out the triple header, we have the Dolphins hosting the Tigers at Suncorp Stadium. So both teams have cop suspensions. Starting with the Finns, Ray Stone will start at lock for Platt. On the bench, they welcome back Kenny Bromwich. For the Tigers, Bud Sullivan starts at 5'8" for the rookie with the hot hand, Lockie Galvin, who's been put on ice for the next 2 weeks. Alatu Fainu, he takes Bud's spot on the bench and could make his NRL debut. I say could. There is a possibility he won't even take the field given Benji didn't even use Bud or Asu Kepawa. Speaking of Kepawa, he's been dropped to reserves and he makes way for fan favourite Alex Twal. As for my pick in this sort of Master vs Apprentice matchup, we got, I think, the Finns at home. Not really confident in that pick. The Tigers do look good, but I do worry about the Finns defense. Tigers looked bloody good on defense, and their forwards, especially young Utuika Manu, they've actually got a good balance in their forward pack. We've been talking about it for the last couple of years. They've always had a decent pack, and this year they're performing. You got Utuika Manu playing with a little bit of mongrel this season, Alex Seyfarth coming off the bench, an absolute DAWG dog, Alex 12 returning. You could convince me to take the Tigers too, to be honest, but I'm going to stand on the Dolphins side of the fence, and we're going to go 1-12 points with Hamiso Tabuai-Fidow bagging a meat pie. Kicking off the Sunday sesh, we have the North Queensland Cowboys hosting the Gold Coast Titans at Queensland Country Bank Stadium. As we look through changes, there are none for the Cowboys. For the Titans though, they have 2 changes, and it's both wingers. Jojo Fifita in for the injured Philip Sami, and Harley Smith-Shields, a straight swap for AKP, who has been dropped to reserves. Isaac Liu was also out, so Jolliffe moves to the front row, and Aaron Clark will start at lock. I do like that change. Another change is Josiah Bahulu, who will be making his debut, coming off the pine for the injured Keenan Palacia. As for my pick, nothing much to say on this. Like I said, I do think it'll be fairly one-sided. I've got the Cowboys coming off a stinker, so 13 plus. We are back in a huge bounce back, and we'll go with Jeremiah and Nanai to back that meat pie. And in the final game of the week, we have the Raiders hosting the Eels at GIO Stadium. Looking at changes, the Raiders will be without Zach Hosking, who's out due to a concussion. So they've got Ata Mariota starting in the back row. What's his name? Elliot Whitehead still out with a calf injury. Interested to see how that plays out. With Mariota going to the starting side, Simi Sasangi joins the bench. And for the Eels, a couple of straight swaps. Simonson in for Harper, and Wadamu Greg will get his first run of the year coming off the pine. They do still have Deja Nasi in reserve, so he could be a potential late in. I can't actually remember if he was in reserves last week, but yeah, they still have Blaze Talangi partnering Dylan Brown. As for my pick here, I do like Canberra. You know, Sticky will have them firing. Looked untouchable for like 25 to 30 minutes last week and just completely fell off. I don't know what else to say about that. I do think the difference here will be the halves once again. They've got Jamal Fogarty, who could, like Aiden Caesar, can take control of this match through his general play kicking. So yeah, to close out the week, we're going to back another bounce back. Give me the Raiders 1 to 12. And we're going to go hunting for another beefer, another steak, bacon and cheese. It's been a minute. Let's go with Josh Papali'i for the meat pie. That's pretty much it. That's my picks for round 5. If you have any tips and predictions of your own, let us know in the comments section down below. Otherwise, go ahead and run a shot at that like button. For more rugby league related content or more content in general, drop your boy a cheeky sub. Thanks for tuning in, and I'll see you later.